Hi everyone, and in today's video we're going to take a look at the HUcaseal. Hi guys, and in today's video we're going to take a look at the HUcaseal class. So this is going to be the next in the series of beginner guides to PSO Blueburst, and it's mainly aimed at people who've either never played the game before, or maybe for those who come back to it after a long absence. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the HUcaseal today. I'll break down what the name means, I'll go through how the stats are distributed and what its advantages and disadvantages are. I'll also cover some recommended gear for the class and maybe demo a boss fight as well, just so you can get an idea how the class works. So first of all, we need to look at the name. So HUcaseal, we do this every video where we break down what the name means. So PSO uses this naming system to denote what race and class type the character is. So HUcaseal, the Hu part of the name denotes that it's a hunter, so we prioritize melee kills. And the caseal part is a suffix that PSO uses to tell you that it's a female android. So HUcaseal means female android hunter. So next what we'll do is we'll go on to some of the stat distributions for the class and some special notes about HUcaseal as well. So at level 1, if we look at the base stats, we can see that HUcaseal starts with 44 HP, which is tied for the highest of the hunters, and therefore tied for the highest of any class in the game. It's actually joint with HUcast. We have 0 TP because we're an android. So as we're an android, we don't use techniques at all, so we have no use for TP really. Our attack power starts at 45, which again is the joint highest. It's actually shared with all the other hunters apart from the HUcaseal, which is a little bit lower. We start with 18 defense, which is kind of average. We have obviously no mental strength because we're an android. We don't have mental strength or TP. We start with 71 88, which is the highest of all the hunters. And we start with 35 evade, which is the joint lowest of the hunters. So we're joint with HUcast, and we're a little bit behind HUmar and quite a bit behind HUcaseal. And I say this every video, but luck we don't talk about because luck doesn't increase by level. The only way you increase luck is by using luck materials or gear that increases your luck. So if we then move on to level 200, and this is without any materials or any mag or anything, so base stats at level 200. HUcaseal HP goes to 1380, which is kind of middle of the road for a hunter. So it's the second lowest, but it's not very far behind HUmar. It's a little bit ahead of HUcaseal, but way behind HUcast. HUcast has about 400 or so HP more. Again, TP we don't need to talk about. For attack power, we go to 901, which is the second lowest, but we are kind of average. So we are a little bit ahead of HUcaseal, which has 835. We're a little bit behind HUmar at 943. But we are, again, significantly behind HUcast, which has 1,146. If we move on to defense, our defense caps at 399, which is the lowest of all the hunters. It is actually quite bad for a hunter, that. Again, we ignore mental strength. Our ATA, so our accuracy, goes to 184, which is by quite a little bit the highest of all the hunters. So the next nearest is HUmar at 174. And beyond that, HUcast and HUcaseal are way behind. Now, evade, although we started with the joint lowest evade at level 1, by level 200 our evade is actually the highest of all the hunters. So it goes to 777, the next nearest being HUmar at 682. So there is quite a big difference in evade. If we then move on to maximum stats, so this is with a full material plan using the units and everything to max as many stats as possible. Our health can go to 1,630, which again is kind of average, so it's almost the same as HUmar actually. There's only a very, very small difference between them. We're a little bit ahead of HUcaseal, but again, way behind HUcast, which has over 2,000. Our attack power goes to 1,301. So this, again, is kind of average. It's a little bit behind HUmar. It's ahead of HUcaseal, and again, way behind HUcast. However, there is a caveat to the attack power. So the caveat being that because we're an android, we don't have access to shifter and D-band unless we're using specific gear or playing in multiplayer. And when you factor that in, HUcaseal does actually have a higher attack power overall, but the actual base stat is higher for HUcaseal. Our defense goes to 525, which it does actually pick up quite a bit towards the end if you use defense materials, but it is still it is still the lowest of all the hunters, but we're not too far behind Huma and HUcaseal. If we then move on to ATA, our ATA actually goes to 218, which is huge for a hunter. That's almost ranger accuracy. In fact, it's actually only a couple of ATA behind. Yeah, so if we look at Raycast actually has 224, so we're just behind Raycast, so we're a very accurate class. Our evade then goes to 877, which again is the highest of all the hunters, and is actually just behind the highest class in the game, which is Raymal at 900. So what you can see when you look at the HUcaseal stat breakdown is that our health and our attack power are fairly middle of the road. They're nothing spectacular. Our defense is quite low for a hunter, but our accuracy and our evade are very, very high. So that gives you an idea of how HUcaseal plays. So you're probably going to be blocking attacks quite a lot with HUcaseal if you do take a hit because your evade's so high. But because our accuracy is so high, we can actually effectively use special attacks. And it makes HUcaseal actually quite a good crowd control class. So if we then move on to, obviously, techniques we don't need to talk about because we're an android, we don't have them. So what we do have though is traps. So obviously, as we're an android, we get a few advantages with that. So the first advantage that we get is we get the ability to use traps. So as with any android, we get access to damage traps, confuse traps, and freeze traps. Damage traps just do damage to any enemies that are near it when it detonates. Freeze traps will freeze anything that's near it, and confuse will confuse the enemies and make them start attacking each other. Now, each android tends to specialize in a certain type of trap a little bit more, and that's reflected in the amount of traps that they get. So with HUcaseal, our distribution is slightly weighted towards freeze and confuse traps, so we get slightly less damage traps. Now, at level 200, like this character is here, you can see I've got 20 of each trap, so it does balance out in the end. But just be aware that the way that the traps are distributed it's more towards the actual status ones. The next advantage we get as an android is we get native HP regen when we stood still. So what I will do is I will go and take a hit deliberately just so you can see that in action. Right, so we'll go back in here and then I'll stand still and you can see how fast the HP regen is. So if we look at HP now, you can see it is regenerating quite fast. Now, this is a bit deceiving because this is with a level 200 character. So HP regen, the way it works is as you level up more, the HP regen speed increases. So at low level, you can actually regen a lot slower than this. But this should give you an idea of how fast the HP regen is at 200. And you can see that it could be used as a way to restore your HP. If you're waiting for people to get to a boss portal or something, it's a good way of just topping your HP up without using a mate. Typically, it's not going to be something you rely on, but it is there as a little bonus. You also, as an android, you obviously get bonuses to certain special attacks. So things like freeze, confuse, and paralysis specials all get boosted effectiveness and ultimate difficulty. Now, combining that with HUcaseal's accuracy means that you're actually really, really good at crowd control with those special attacks. You're also, as an android, you are immune to poison and paralysis as well. So you can't be poisoned or paralyzed. Another benefit we have as an android is you have the ability to see traps. So this isn't referring to the traps that you have. So in areas, obviously, you have a lot of areas that will have traps in corridors and things like that. With an android, you can see them. So it means that you can actually... Yeah, I can actually see one here, actually. So if you look ahead here, you might be able to see that little black and red bit floating. I'm trying to highlight it here, this here. So you can see, we can actually see that trap already. If I was playing a human character or a Newman, I wouldn't be able to see this. So it allows you to clean out dangerous traps from areas without actually running into them, which is really, really useful. That's another advantage of playing an android. So, obviously the disadvantages of an android is that you don't have access to any techniques. So that comes with a few issues. So because you've got no mental strength and no TP, it means you can't use anything like spirit specials. It also means that you can't take advantage of anything that requires mental strength to equip. So there is disadvantages to that as well. Obviously, the big one is that you also don't have access to Rester, Anti-Shifter, Deband, so you will be using a lot more mates and soul atomizers with an android generally. So just bear that in mind if you are considering one. But next what we'll do is we'll look at some recommended gear that I would recommend for HUcaseal. But before we talk about that, there's one important thing we need to discuss about HUcaseal. So one thing that's notable about HUcaseal, which doesn't really affect a lot of the classes in the game, is that it has quite a few different unique weapon animations. So there are other classes that benefit from this. So for example, I know that some of the forces have unique animations. I know that Raymal has a unique handgun animation, but HUcaseal has quite a few of them. So the first one that is unique is, if we look at daggers. So the HUcaseal dagger animation is fantastic. It's totally different to the other hunter dagger animations, and it's a lot more reliable to use. So generally, I tend to say that daggers are usually not very reliable weapons with hunters, because quite often you'll find that even with a heavenly battle, you'll get interrupted quite easily with them. But the way HUcaseal's animation works, it's a lot easier to get the hits in. You can see this is without a battle unit in, it's already quite fast. That's daggers. The next one that has a unique animation is double sabers. So again, the double saber animation, you see it is totally different to the other hunters. And again, this is quite a fast animation. I don't think this has a huge benefit over the other hunter double saber animations, but it is nice to see a unique one. The next one is the unarmed animation. So again, HUcaseal unarmed animation is this. So you can see it is actually very fast. Now, generally, I would say that unarmed weapons are generally not worth using. A lot of them are just not good. There is a couple of little exceptions, but generally, this isn't going to be too much of a benefit, I wouldn't have thought. But the next one that's unique is the claw animation. Again, the claw is... Now this one, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the HUcaseal claw animation personally. The first two hits are really, really fast, but the third hit to me has quite a lot of delay on it. However, I also know that the HUcaseal claw animation has a really, really bad third hit as well. So I don't know which one's better here. I would imagine the HUcaseal one is maybe slightly better. So that's something you need to know about HUcaseal, is that a lot of these weapons have unique animations. But I would say definitely the dagger animation is definitely the huge one in my opinion. It's just such a better animation than the other than the HUcaseal. So what we'll do now is we'll talk about some recommended gear. So what we'll do is we'll start with some defensive gear. So the first thing I would recommend is, obviously we always tend to look at the mag first. So as usual, I would just recommend going with a general power mag for the most part. So 5 defense, 145 power, 50 dex, no mind. Obviously you don't need any mind because you've got no benefit from it with being an android. Now, HUcaseal obviously has very, very high accuracy, so later in the game you may want to reduce the amount of dex on the mag and maybe put a bit more power in. But generally I would say that a typical power mag will work fine on a HUcaseal. As for photon blasts, surprise, surprise, it's the usual 3. So I would always go with Estella and Pillar for your damage photon blasts, and it should be obvious that the benefit of having Myla and Eula on an android is huge. You know, we don't really have access to Shifter and D-Band very easily at all, so having the ability to use a level 21 Shifter D-Band from our photon blast makes a huge, huge difference to our damage, and the damage we take as well. I would always recommend going with Myla and Eula on a mag in general, but particularly for an android. So next up we'll look at some other defensive gear. So for armors, we've got a couple of options. So I've mentioned this in a few of the Hunter videos, but 13 is always a really, really reasonable option. So the reason you use 13 is if you combine this with certain slicers, which are the Slicer of Assassin, Disc of Liberator, or Disc of Braveman, you get quite a big boost to the damage and accuracy. Now, this is really, really good when it's paired with the Disc of Braveman, especially one with hit. Because obviously Disc of Braveman has a Berserk special, so it can put out some really serious damage, and the boost from 13 makes it even more deadly. Now, combine this with the accuracy that HUcaseal has, and it makes HUcaseal lethal with this combination. So I would definitely recommend 13 as an option. It's probably just going to be an armor that you carry with you for certain places where you know you're going to use a slicer quite a lot, but it is an option. Next option, we talked about this in the Raymal video, but stealth suit. So we've already discussed that one of the main benefits of HUcaseal is that you have very, very high evade. By using stealth suit, we just capitalise on that even more. Not only does it look cool, but you can see our evade is now well over 1,000, which is just colossal. Nothing really comes close to this. The only class that can outdo HUcaseal for evade is Raymal. This basically means that you are going to be blocking a lot. Now, I have mentioned this before. It depends on your playstyle whether you want to go this route, because using a really, really high evade character can have its drawbacks. So if you get blocked in by enemies, if you get surrounded, you will just continuously block over and over again, and you won't be able to do anything. You'll just be... You essentially get stun locked because you can't actually do anything. As soon as you try to attack, you'll just interrupt another enemy attack. Now, with an android, there are ways to get around it, so you could potentially drop a trap. There isn't really an animation for dropping traps as such, so you can probably get away. If you're very quick at doing your quick menus, you might be able to drop a trap between getting hit. So there is ways around it, but just be aware of that if you are going for a high evade character, that you do run this risk-reward situation of you are going to block a lot of attacks, which is good for survival, but you don't want to get surrounded because you could just get locked into this cycle of just blocking continuously. So just bear that in mind, particularly if you are going to use something like a stealth suit as well. That's one option. Next one we've got is an armor called Sweetheart. So Sweetheart, the way you get this, because it won't appear on any of the drop charts, the way you get this is you want to get a spirit garment first. Then what you want to do is you want to exchange photon drops in the Gallon shop quest in Paganini's shop to get what's called a Magic Rock Heart Key. You use the Magic Rock Heart Key on the spirit garment, and that will turn it into an armor called Love Heart, which in itself is a pretty good armor. Love Heart has this unique effect where it will boost your defense if you go near a male character, because Love Heart is female only. If you then use another Magic Rock Heart Key on the Love Heart, you'll turn it into a Sweetheart. A Sweetheart has sort of the opposite effect, so while Love Heart increases your defense, Sweetheart increases your attack. So this again will help to sort of cut some of that deficit from not having Shifter and D-Band. The downside is that effect, there are two downsides to it. So the first downside is you only get the attack power boost when you're near a male character. So obviously in single player it's not going to affect you unless you're with a male NPC. The other downside is that you do lose defense, so it does cut your defense as well. So just be aware of that. That's one option. I believe there is also a set boost with this as well. Might be with a double saber Vivienne. I'm not 100% sure on that though. So just you might want to look that up and see if Vivienne has a set boost, because Vivienne is a really solid double saber. Next option you've got is the Blue Odoshi Violet Nimado. So this armor is an interesting one. So its stats are fine. You know, it gives a little bit to all resistances. Its defense and evade are pretty good. It's nothing amazing. The main reason that you use this is for, well, two reasons. So the first one is it has a built-in Heavenly Battle. So you don't need to use any units to increase your attack speed, because you get the maximum attack speed boost from this armor. So you can see just by equipping that, you get the increased attack speed, as opposed to you can see it's a massive difference. This is the fastest I can go with it. And then again, just to re-equip that again, you can see it's quite a big difference in your attack speed. So that's one option. The other benefit it has is that the Blue Odoshi also has a set boost with certain katanas and twin swords. So the notable ones are it increases Sanga, Yasha, Kamui, Sanga and Yasha. So, and it's quite a big increase. I think it's 100 attack power and a chunk of accuracy as well. So definitely worth looking into. So that's armors. So next we're looking to shields. So a couple of options for this I would go with. So first one is Esparta version 201. So this is a defensive gear. You can use it at a very, very low level. You can see you only need level 17 to equip it, which is insane. Defensively, it's not brilliant. It gives you very little defense and a little boost to your evade. the main reason that you would use this is because it gives you quite a big accuracy boost. It gives you a 15 ATA boost. Now, admittedly, HUcaseal benefits less from this because you've already got good ATA anywhere, but at a lower level, this is probably still a really, really good choice. And to be honest, with some of the evade that enemies have, sometimes having that extra accuracy can help, so it is something still worth definitely considering. It also has fantastic thunder resistance as well. So that's one option you can go with. Obviously, very late game, you can swap this out for things like Red Ring. I don't typically recommend Red Ring in videos because it is an insanely hard drop and you can only equip it at level 180 plus. So it's something you can go towards at end game, but just be aware that you are going to be probably in for a long hunt to get it, and that you need to be incredibly high level to actually equip it. Another option is the Kasami Bracer. So Kasami Bracer, you need level 112 to equip, which isn't too bad. This gives you pretty good defense. The main thing is it gives you quite a lot of evade. So again, you're capitalizing on that evade that HUcaseal has. Now, there is a little thing I need to point out with this. So PSO is renowned for having really misleading descriptions in its gear, and this is no exception. So in the description for Kasami, it says, mysterious bracer found in the ruins. It boosts movement with its strange powers. It does nothing of the kind. It doesn't increase your movement speed or your attack speed or anything like that. What it means, I think it's just badly translated. I think it means that it boosts your movement as in your agility, as in boosting your evade, because it does give you a lot of evade. So I think that's how you're meant to read it. So just be aware that it doesn't actually boost your movement speed or your attack speed or anything like that. You mainly use this for evade. That's one option. For units, again, we cover this on almost every character that isn't a force. And to be honest, even some forces are worth using it on. So V101. So V101, when it's equipped, increases your attack power, evade, defense, mental strength, and luck by 15. Obviously, it won't do anything to our mental strength on HUcaseal. It also increases your accuracy by 1.5 and increases your attack speed by 40%, which is the same as a Heavenly Battle. So this is just a fantastic unit just for overall stat boosts, and the ability that it gives you, the fact it gives you a built-in Heavenly Battle as well is a really nice bonus. Now, yes, if you're using the Blue Adoshi, you're not going to benefit from the attack speed boost because you've already got it from the Blue Adoshi, but it's still a really decent unit overall, just because of the stat boosts are really nice. I mean, the main one for me is the fact that it increases your luck by 15. That's huge. So next up, we have V502. So usually I don't really recommend V502. But Android hunters can get a bit more use out of it. So V502 is a unit that increases the success rate of special attacks. It's specific ones though, so it's mainly freeze, confuse, paralysis, and I believe it's also instant kill specials as well. It boosts the effectiveness of. Now, with an Android, we already have a boost to those freeze, confuse, and paralysis specials anyway in Ultimate, so this will further boost that. Combined with HUcaseal's accuracy, this is a really, really good unit to use just for locking down spawns with paralysis. There is also weapons that use instant kill as well that you can get some good mileage out of this with as well. Next up we have Proof of Sword Saint. So you get this by finding a Swordsman's Law unit and then killing 20,000 enemies while it's equipped, and it will unseal into Proof of Sword Saint. This raises your ATA by 30, which is massive. Your evade by 60, so again we're capitalising on that huge evade. It lowers your defense by 20, but our defense is already quite low anyway, so that's not really a negative HUcaseal, to be honest. When equipped with a saber, a katana, or a twin sword. Now, I would say for katanas, you're probably not going to use too many of them because single katanas are not too great, really, for their animation. Their animation is generally quite slow. For sabers, there might be a couple of options you can get out of it. So the main one I can think of for that is Excalibur. Twin swords, obviously, weapons like Jizai or Sangha and Yasha, they could get some benefit from that. I know there is specific ones that it affects though, so you may want to check that because although it says sabers, katanas, and twin swords, it doesn't mean all of them. So you might just want to look the details up of Proof of Sword Saint to make sure that the weapon that you're using actually gets the boost from it. That's the unit, so put those in. So next we want to weapons. So weapons. So first one is, so for multi-targets, we've got weapons like Chang. So Chang is a blue burst only partisan. Looks really cool. Oddly, it still has the weird photon sound, even though it's obviously not a photon weapon, which is a bit strange. But the main reason to use Yun Chang is because it's a very strong partisan and it has a berserk special. I don't really need to say much more about that. It's just really, really good for taking care of mobs. Typically with females, you tend to find that partisans are a little bit more useful for taking care of large spawns than swords, just because the sword animation is generally quite bad on females. You can get away with it with a heavenly battle, but typically partisans are a little bit more reliable. But don't let that dissuade you from using a sword. But yeah, the main reason that you would use Yun Chang is for the berserk special. Next up, we have the red sword. So although I've just mentioned that swords are not as good as partisans, red sword is actually really, really good on android hunters. Reason is because its special is Seize, which is a paralysis special. So I believe it's also unreduced as well, so it's got better effectiveness. Now, combining that with HUcaseal's accuracy, combining that with the boost from V502 if you've got that, and particularly if you can get a hit red sword, this means that you can use something like a red sword to lock down spawns. Essentially, you are kind of using this like a melee version of a spread needle. You're not going to be as effective as a spread needle, don't get me wrong. Rangers are always going to have better crowd control options, but this is really, really nice for just shutting down spawns, particularly if you're solo, stopping them from actually attacking you so you can take care of them easily. So red sword I would definitely recommend for a HUcaseal. Next up, let's talk about some single target weapons. So first one is Daylight Scar. So we looked at this a little bit earlier on. So what I haven't shown is how fast Daylight Scar is with a Heavenly Battle equipped. You can see it's a very quick animation overall, and this is why HUcaseal is absolutely fantastic with daggers. So the reason you use Daylight Scar is, again, they are one of, if not the strongest daggers in the game. They're up there, and they have a berserk special. So again, same kind of reason as Yun Chang, but this is more for single target kills. So things like bosses, you're going to use things like Daylight Scar on. Next up, another option for single target is Jizai. So Jizai, you get this by, you need to find the two separate katanas. So the red katana is Guren, and the blue one is Shoren. Once you've got them, you equip one of them and then use the other katana on it, and it'll turn it into Jizai. So these are the strongest twin swords in the game. They also have an unreduced Hell special, which is instant kill. Again, combine that with V502, and you've got a weapon that's absolutely incredible for killing enemies with low dark resist. We do have the same twin sword animation as HUcaseal, but to be honest, with a Heavenly Battle, it's not too bad. You can generally get away with it. This is typically used instead of Sangha and Yasha just because of the Hell special and because of how much stronger it is. However, I will say that if you're looking for one with hit, it's probably easier to go for Sangha and Yasha, just because Sangha is a lot easier to hunt than either of these swords. So just bear that in mind, that although you can probably get a Jizai quite easily from things like Black Paper's Deal, if you want one with hit or with good percentages, it might be quite hard to get one. But it is definitely worth using if you can get one, and it looks dope as well. So next option is we've got the Black King Bar. Black King Bar is one of, if not the strongest double saber in the game. The way you get this is you need to find a Monkey King Bar, and then you want to go to, again, to Gallon's shop, to Paganini's shop, and you want to exchange for an item called a Blue Black Stone. You use the Blue Black Stone on the Monkey King Bar, and it'll turn it into a Black King Bar. And again, the main reason you use this is just for how strong it is, and because HUcaseal double saber animation is really nice. That's another single target option. Next up, we cover this in basically every video that isn't Force, but Excalibur. I can't not mention Excalibur. It's one of the strongest weapons in the game. Berserk special, hits 3 targets. You know, I can't pass it over. It's one of the most busted weapons in the entire game, Blue Burst. Now, yes, it is a Blue Burst exclusive, as are a lot of these weapons, actually. Red Sword is obtainable in other versions, and so is the Black King Bar, but all the other weapons we mentioned so far have all been Blue Burst exclusive. I can't stress how ridiculous Excalibur is. It's unbelievably broken. The fact it can hit 3 targets with Berserk with Saber attack speed is just ridiculous. Also, bear in mind that you will also can get the boost from Proof of Sword Saint as well if it affects this. So again, just check Proof of Sword Saint to see if it does affect Excalibur. So definitely recommend that. And again, if anyone doesn't know, the way you get Excalibur is you want to find a saber called a Lame d'Argent, And then once you've got that, kill 10,000 enemies with it equipped, and it'll unseal into Excalibur. I probably wouldn't use an android to unseal it because it'll take you ages. I would probably put it on either a Force or a HUcaseal and just spam Gifoy in quests that have a lot of enemies. So next up, so a couple of slightly obscure options. So we've got Last Swan. So Last Swan is a Blue Burst exclusive handgun, and it's unique. Typically, I don't really recommend handguns apart from ones that have specials like demons. The reason that you use Last Swan though is because when you shoot with it, it actually shoots like a mech gun, but has a handgun animation. So essentially, it is a faster mech gun. And for some reason, HUcaseal is able to use this. So I think this is female only to use. Its actual stats are not particularly great, but because you've got a handgun animation with mech gun shots, it is actually really useful. Now the downside is I think this is only available as a quest reward, so I don't think you can get one with hit. But it is another option you can think of if you want to go for a range option. Just to mention it now, but obviously using things like charge Vulcans will always be useful as well. So if you can get charge Vulcans with hit, they're always going to do well for basically any class that can use them. Next up, on the same theme as Last Swan, we've also got Dual Bird. So Dual Bird is a mech gun that you create by combining Master Raven with Last Swan. These are one of the strongest mech guns in the game. Again, because both the guns that make it are from quest rewards, I don't think you can get one with hit. But strangely, these are ranger only, apart from they're also usable by HUcaseal as well, for some reason. So if you want to go with pure strength on mech guns, this is probably what you want to go for. Just bear in mind that you can't get hit on them, so you might want to go with something else if you wanted to get mech guns with hit. Next up, Ras Blades. So Ras Blades are a very, very interesting weapon. So they're generally passed over for other daggers. You know, things like DLX Scar are going to be a lot better for taking care of enemies. The sole reason that you tend to get Ras Blades on either HUcast or HUcaseal is because of their special attack. So their special, if you keep doing it, it casts, I think it's a level 3 shifter and deband. Now, it's not a very big boost overall, but it is an attack power boost, and it is one of the only ways that HUcaseal can get access to shifter and deband. So I would definitely recommend going for these. They're just a really useful weapon overall. And to be honest, even if you don't have a better dagger, these are still pretty strong overall for daggers. So if you don't have a DLX Scar, these will do you perfectly fine. So these are a definite option. They also look really cool as well. That's a few weapons that I would recommend for HUcaseal anywhere. So I think what we'll do now is we'll go into where HUcaseal shines in a party. So although HUcaseal is a hunter overall, it is actually very good at crowd control as well. So it has this strange role where, although it's a hunter, you can actually use it as like a backup support as well. And you can see the damage that we're doing here is actually really, really nice. Obviously, we are able to take care of all the traps as well because we can see traps. And again, this is where G's Eye becomes really useful. You can see how ridiculous it is having unreduced health on a twin sword. It just means you can absolutely maul through things. Again, we can use our guns to take care of all the traps because we've got that trap vision. When things get close, we can go to melee. You do need to be a little bit careful because obviously we don't have Rester, so you do need to be a little bit conservative with using your Berserk specials. Just be aware that, you know, you are relying on your mates. But it's a very, very versatile hunter overall because you've got access to, you know, really easy ability to apply status specials. You know, things like G's Eye are going to be really, really useful for the instant kills in certain areas. GSI will differ quite a bit depending on where you use it. So in episode 1, typically you won't get too much use out of the special because a lot of things in episode 1 are quite high dark resist. But episode 2 and certain parts of episode 4, dark attacks can absolutely maul through enemies. So that's an advantage of using HUcaseal. So you essentially use it as kind of frontline support hunter. And that differs to HUcaseal. So with HUcaseal, your support is going to be, you know, applying buffs to your party, applying debuffs to enemies, using text to freeze, things like that, while also giving them melee support. With HUcaseal, you're going to be more focusing on applying statuses to enemies, but as well also providing that melee support and trap clearance as well. So it's actually a very useful class overall. It's also very, very good for challenge mode, because the high evade obviously will help you to block a little bit more often, which is going to be really useful for helping you survive in challenge mode. And because you're an android, you've got the trap vision, so you can clear out things for your party to make things safer for them. HUcase will obviously do more damage, but again, the accuracy is going to be quite useful for you in challenge mode as well, because you are going to be able to land hits a bit easier. So HUcaseal is definitely one of the classes I would recommend if you are going to do challenge mode. So what we'll do now is we'll use the sandbox mode to warp to a boss, just so you can see a typical boss fight for a HUcaseal, just to get an idea of sort of how it plays roughly. So what is warp to Barbarate, and I'll show you a quick run through of that fight. So what we do first is we'll quickly switch to the S-Reds and we'll use the special just to get the shifter and D-band up. It won't make a huge difference, but we will have to cast it a few times during the fight as well, because it is only level 3, so... Typically for something like Barbarate, I would recommend using Slicer. But I just want to show you, for example, how the dagger animation works on HUcaseal and how good it is. So what you can see is that even with that evade, we are still taking some hits. So what we'll do now is switch to Daylight Scar. The worst thing about Barbarate is that he doesn't stay on the raft very often, so I typically find that sometimes using a single target weapon is actually better because he just doesn't stay on the raft very much at all. But you can see there, we are doing crazy damage with those Daylight Scar. Again, just quickly hit the S-Reds. Now, when he's off the raft, I'll use Last Swan. Can't really do much about him when he's under the raft. You just kind of have to wait for him. Sometimes he does stay there quite a while, which is really annoying. So what I'll probably do now is I'll switch back to my S-Reds, just ready for when he comes back up again. It's a little bit of a different fight to Derol there, because he stays on the raft so short amount of time. You can't really benefit much from multi-target weapons too much. So again, we prep the S-Reds because he's going to jump back on again. And back to the Daylight Scar. That's him done. So you can see it's quite an interesting class to use overall. The S-Reds are a really, really useful weapon just for that little attack power boost. The only downside is that you do have to recast it quite often because level 3 shifter doesn't last very long. But you can see it's a very, very good dagger animation. It lets you get those hits in very quickly. So although you can probably do more damage to Barbarate using multi-hit weapons, because he doesn't stay on the raft very often, sometimes it is better to just go with a very fast weapon, even if it's only single target. Obviously, using something like Excalibur would do that even quicker, because you've got the speed and the multi-target hits. But I wanted to show you specifically the dagger animation for HUcaseal and how good it is against some bosses. So I hope that's been relatively useful overall. The last thing I'll cover just quickly is just some section ID recommendations for HUcaseal. So typically, your general hunter IDs are always going to be useful for HUcaseal. So the first one, kind of have to mention Skylight. So Skylight gets a lot of really good hunter weapons. It's got a really decent drop for the limbed Argent that makes Excalibur. You've obviously got the end game hunts like CLJ Sword. You've got Chainsword. Chainsword's actually also really decent on HUcaseal as well because the HP steal's really good. So Skylight's always going to be a really useful ID to go with for Hunter. Next ones I would recommend is there's good all-round IDs like Whiteill. Whiteill is a really strong ID just generally across the board and is always going to do well for you. So Whiteill is one I'd definitely go for. Viridia is actually also a really decent ID as well. So Viridia is actually a really strong Hunter ID. It's also one of not many IDs that get the Red Ring and the Parasitic Gene Flow. So that's definitely worth considering as well. This character on the sandbox server is Yellowbows. Yellowbows is an ID I think is kind of slept on by a lot of people. So Yellowbows is, I almost consider it like a light version of Whiteill. It is a generalized ID that is, you know, it is quite balanced overall. I would typically say that Yellowbows is probably better for the human hunters though, just because the 3 weight 4 flowers with the spirit special that you can get, which obviously you can't really make much use of with HUcaseal because you don't have any TP to use the special. But Yellowbows is still decent. The only reason she's Yellowbows on this is because that's the ID she was assigned when I made her for the sandbox server. So I would probably go with those IDs overall. So probably Skylight, Whiteill, or Viridia would be my top picks. But hope it's been a useful video overall. If you've got any questions at all, just leave them in the comments below and I will try and answer what I can. I do 2 uploads a week normally, so I usually do one NGS video midweek, and then my weekend upload is normally another Phantasy Star game, which will either be PSO, PSU, or another one of the Phantasy Stars. We also stream once a week on Sundays on YouTube. I am considering doing some Twitch streams as well at some point, but I'll let you guys know if that goes ahead. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking or subscribing to the channel or becoming a member. We've just launched memberships recently and super chats, so yeah, so if you want to like or subscribe, that's much appreciated. But for now, I'll end the video there. Any questions, leave them below. But otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.